Welcome to Cancer and Peace. My name is Sean Stewart, and I'm here with Peter Scalzo, 20-year cancer survivor, journeyer, and we're going to talk about the cancer journey today. So welcome, Peter.
Yeah, welcome. Thank you.
Anything new going on in your world before we get kicked off?
My scarf doesn't match my shirt. Did you notice that?
You know, being a guy who doesn't really pay attention to those kind of things, it wasn't even crossing my mind.
Really?
Yeah.
You usually say something about how I'm dressed.
Yeah, I've changed.
Wow, 2025 has brought some new changes. Liar.
Liar. I love it. So last episode, we talked about, we laid out 6 stages that you would walk through, and we put names on them. They fit a little bit with some stages that John Eldridge had put out there, in his Father by God book, which, you can go back if you want to do that. We're gonna talk in more detail about the first stage and just dive in to see what it looked like for you and what's important for anybody who is on a cancer journey and that they would want to just know about and to think about and reflect on as they get started. And we say started because so I think a lot of this is going to relate to, we talked a second ago, and is when you are diagnosed with cancer, there's a form of wounding that takes place. And we put the label last episode as the first stage is the adolescent stage and what it might look like. The early stage is a good way of thinking about it in the cancer journey. And so the wounding happens some with the diagnosis, but I think there's other forms of wounding too that take place in this. And we've talked about this, and I want to throw one out there and just see how you respond to anything else that might hit your mind. But one of them, and the reason why I'm going to mention this one is because somebody had talked to me about it just this last week, was identity shift. Is that you all of a sudden are given a new identity, and that identity as a cancer patient now is something that you have to wade into. And so this adolescent stage, there's identities that are passed to you. There's a wounding that takes place. And what resonates out of that, or what are some things that you think we should be thinking about that happened to you even?
Yeah, I'm just relating it to my own journey. And wounding is an interesting phrase or term to use for it. And I was thinking about, I think when I was first diagnosed, I didn't really know the implications, and I don't think there was much of a wounding yet. But then when the doctor came into the room and scratching his head and basically said, I don't know how to tell you this, but this is high grade. And I didn't fit into any of the risk categories or anything for this cancer. And I was thinking about the emotional, physical, and spiritual wounding that I went through. And I can, run through that right now for me. But I don't know, do you want me to run through those areas? Or
I do, but when you said something just a second ago that just prompted me to say you came in a sense of a peaceful, what's the word you just used a second ago, but you didn't have these overly negative thoughts.
So how it happened with me was that I had a cystoscopy to look in a scope, and it was basically, okay, this is usually cancer, but I'm going to get in there and scrape it and do pathology on it, biopsy it. So I didn't really know the implications yet. I knew something was going on.
Yeah, that was the words. You didn't know the implications.
Yes.
But you were kind of at so let's call it naivety.
Yes.
And it wasn't naive in that you were, dumb. Naivety, you just didn't know a lot. And
I had researched enough to know that there was a difference between a low grade situation that I was facing versus high grade and a stage and the staging too. I had researched that the grade and the staging, and those things really matter with bladder cancer.
Yeah, that's good. The reason why that sticks because we're talking about adolescence. We're talking about these early years and the early part of the cancer journey. And you have painted this picture that I really like, and it's the picture of your dad in the station wagon. Would you repaint that? Because I think it defines before the wounding, the starting place, this naivety, and it's actually a really good place to be living in
Yeah.
at the early stages. Can you just paint that picture?
Yeah, for me, I'll just relate to it because really believe it's something that ministered to me and that really God brought me. It wasn't in the form of a vision; it was more in the form of an idea that came in and then took shape and actually became a picture for me.
Yeah.
Actually, a kind of like a moving video, and it's the picture is the old wood paneled station wagons. People call them woodies, and to me, that connotates like the 1950s, 60s, and 70s when I went to high school in the 70s, and life just seemed more simple back then. And in fact, less more safe back then. That's just how I view it in my mind, simple life, like family values, safety, all that kind of stuff.
You realize that a wooden panel station wagon versus modern
Yeah.
vehicles, the safety levels quite a bit.
Oh, no,
They
I'm
even
not
had
talking
the,
about
the seat that faced
Yeah.
backwards in the very back. That
Oh yeah, we didn't wear
seat belts. Yeah.
Yeah.
You keep going though. I get your point though. Yes.
Yeah, not that. Just in the sense of like the overall feeling of safety with family values and just it just, at least to my mind, that's a picture of that. And so the wood panel station wagon brought me back to like an old kind of traditional family values and safety within in that sense. And so in this picture, I'm a little boy. My feet don't even touch the floor, and I'm sitting in the back seat, and it's a bench back seat. I don't have my seatbelt on or anything because back then we didn't do that. And I am sitting in that seat, and I have my little guys on my lap. I have my little army guys, my action figures, just little plastic guys. And I'm playing away and pretending and doing whatever I did. My imagination's running wild, but I'm at a point where I feel happy and joyful and safe and content inside. And when I look up and see who's driving, I see the flowing hair because the windows are down. It's summertime and there's a summer breeze going through the car because we didn't have air conditioning in our old station wagon. But anyway, it's a beautiful day, and the driver is Jesus, and he's got longer hair, and it's kind of ruffling in the wind, and it's flowing back, and he's driving. And he has this little smile on his face, because we're enjoying this time. It's a time of pleasure and joy. We're free, we're on the road. And I just know that as a little guy, it just was impressed upon me is I have no idea how a car works. I don't have that knowledge. I don't know how, I've seen my parents stop for gas, but I don't know how they pay for it. I don't know. I don't have any knowledge of where we're going because I don't know how to read a map. I forget at what age I finally realized, we're going home right now. You know what I mean? I'm just on a road sitting in the back seat. And I thought, and at that time when I got that picture, it was a recognition, acknowledgement that I didn't have control over this cancer journey and I didn't know where it was going. Yeah. So can I get to that place of contentment within this cancer journey?
Yeah, I want to come back to this story at some point. I think this is such a great picture of, how we start out in a stage of there's a level of the world is, and it may not be every area of your life is this way, but you think about from your health journey and you're at peace about this aspect of your life, at least this cancer aspect. You don't have any of that chaos going on, any of the worry, and all of a sudden, it's as if you're sitting in the back seat of the station wagon, and we can picture that. I can picture that. I'm going to guess a lot of people can of playing with something that you enjoy playing with, and you're not worried at all about the external world that has all the stresses and pressures of that, because that's what adolescence is that you don't have all those responsibilities put on you yet. You're in a safe environment, and somebody else is worrying about those for you. Mm-hmm. That's the starting point. Mm-hmm. And that changes with the wounding too. And so you just described in the midst of that, kind of the piece of that, you got a high grade diagnosis, the wounding.
Yeah. And in my particular case, married with my kids, 6 children at that point, and, busy doing my law job and really, really feeling pretty good about things. And struggling, though, a little bit, quite a bit, because my mom had a terminal diagnosis with cancer at that time when I was officially diagnosed. But it was at that, the scene was sitting in the examining table of a doctor's office. I'm the one seated there, and Leslie, my wife, is right next to me, and the urologist coming in and scratching his head, saying he's looking at the chart and the paperwork, and we didn't have computers that they rolled around back then. They actually had papers, and reading the pathology results and basically saying, I don't know how to tell you this, but when he told me that news, I get news, stress comes in my gut, trauma, and I immediately thought I was going to throw up. And he said, you're getting green. And so I laid down on that examining table to try to compose myself. And I remember the first feelings were, I'm going to die. This is going to take my life. And I remember composing myself and going outside and sitting on a curb. Right outside the doctor's office, there was a curb, calling my mom, because she was a safe person for me. And I knew she knew what it was like to get a diagnosis. But I remember the wounding very well. And it was really, what big time was, God, how could you let this happen? That was so my relationship was wounded, I thought, with me and him. I was like, hold on, something's wrong here. The
biggest word I want to put in there that you just said that I heard was fear.
Fear, huge.
Fear was introduced, and I think in most of our adolescent journey, we develop our biggest fears. Mm-hmm. Our wounding creates our biggest fears, and so what I heard you just say was, hey, at the wounding place, fear was instilled, because you said, hey, you had fear that you were going to die. Mm-hmm. And all of us are going to die, you meant, probably relatively much, much sooner than you ever believed. Mm-hmm. And that fear, was it real?
Well, when you say, was it real, I mean, that emotion of fear was very real then. You mean, it's 20 years later and I'm sitting here in a studio talking to you.
Yeah.
So did it happen? Did my fear happen? No, it didn't happen.
Not yet anyway, right? Yes.
Yes, but the emotion.
Yes. Yeah.
It's very real.
I love you defining it. Yes, that's good. Yes.
And I can remember how I would describe it is like, I'm sailing on a ship and it's beautiful, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a pirate ship comes in and just takes over that ship.
Yeah.
And it's like, holy cow, where'd you come from? And now everything's different. Now life is totally changed and different. And it's a tough feeling to try to process. For me, it was very difficult.
I think that's a great way to define it. This is the stage that we're talking about, is that peace, tranquility, and then that world gets shattered. Mm-hmm. What do you think, and I think this is what we wanted to talk about a little bit today, then, is what is the most important things to have, because you're experiencing trauma.
Yeah.
And what happens in normal adolescence is we experience traumas, and those fear becomes introduced, and the next things are probably the most important thing, because if you store trauma, you can store unhealthy behaviors for the rest of your life. And so I'm going to guess if you store this trauma incorrectly or not without the right things, you may walk your cancer journey, I'm going to say, unhealthily the rest of the way.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to explore that just a little bit with you today, as far as you had a trauma experience that shattered. And I love the way you set up different examples of what it was like, for you to live in a place, this station wagon experience to now the pirate ship taking over.
And I like the wounding analogy, because my peace and tranquility was wounded, and now I was processing life through a lens of fear. And my physical body, I was wounded in my views about my physical body, which I thought, I'm a extremely healthy guy, and yet cancer is now in my, has presented itself within my body. And I'm like, hold on, this body that I thought was this healthy body has failed me. And then spiritually, that was a big wounding too. I was like, well, God, how could you let this happen? So, but I do think your question about how did I handle the wounding, right? Like, what did I look to?
What do you need?
Yeah, what did I need? I know for me, I needed to talk about it. I needed to tell people about this.
Well, this was something that I don't know if you even recognize what you said a few minutes ago, but it's like you talked about, you got that diagnosis. The doctor said you were turning green, which is interesting by itself, because it describes the trauma that you were feeling was affecting your your physicality, even though it was just verbal news. That trauma was affecting your physicality. And then you said you went outside and you sat down and you called your mom. And that seems really important to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it was. I think it, getting back to that root that I had, that kind of mom always represented to me, that parent that I could crawl up into her lap and tell her the fearful stuff, and she would be the one to comfort and say, okay, we're going to get through this. This is okay. We're going to. And so it was interesting, I guess, that I did want to tell her first.
Did she say, this is okay, everything's going to be all right? What did she say?
Really interesting. She said something like, oh, crap.
Yeah.
I was hoping it wouldn't be this.
Well, that's fast. I'm really glad that she did, because I didn't know the answer to the question. So I was interested in this because I think you said that she already had a terminal diagnosis at that point. So she, in her own cancer journey, had got to this is terminal and you're not going to survive your cancer.
Yep.
And she probably was already well into processing that in a big way.
Well into it, yeah.
Right. And so I'm just putting a timeline in my own head together, because I didn't know exactly where those overlapped at, but I knew it was close.
So that was when I was finally diagnosed. It was in May of the year that she passed, in October. So I was diagnosed, had some surgeries, minor ones, and then in July had my big remove the bladder, remove prostate and all that. And then a couple months later, she passed.
Yeah, so it's kind of bang, bang, bang.
Yeah.
The reason why this is important, what you just said to me, speaks such wonderful news in a different way, and that is she didn't give you false hope.
No.
Your safe place wasn't somebody who was going to tell you everything's going to be all right, honey.
Right.
She said, oh, crap. I was hoping it wouldn't be that. And yet she was still your safe place.
Yeah, and I remember saying to her, I'm too young to die. And I think it was important for me to be able to express my fear.
Yeah.
I think that was very helpful for me to be able to say it.
Yeah.
And I knew I could say it to her, because I knew she would sit in the dirt with me. She was not she would just listen.
I want to just put that as a trail marker. So, because that to me seems like such an important part of adolescence is, and in this space, once you've been wounded, is finding someone who can sit in the dirt. And for you in that moment, it was your mom. And I think as time moved on, it had to be other people's, because your mom passed as you were going along in the journey. But
yeah, because it was, I mean, I look at it now, 50 surgeries. I mean, the list, the resume is huge. twice told to go home and pass by Sloan Kettering. I mean, there's a lot of points on this timeline. But this bit of getting the news at this time in my life is truly an adolescent-like time in the cancer journey, period.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and sitting in the dirt is something we've talked about a little bit, but
Yeah.
defining that meaning, or I'll put a definition out there and you can comment on anything you see on top of that, is someone who can hear your pain, can listen intently without giving you a fix.
Right.
And without giving you false affirmation.
Yep.
I think those are the key characteristics that I would put on it right now.
Yeah, and I heard a definition of empathy the other day that I liked. It wasn't so much about like giving a fix or that kind of thing, but it was about being able to understand where the person is. So I'm going to listen intently. And I may ask some questions for clarification.
For understanding.
For understanding, right. But I'm gonna enter into a space of understanding. And Mom was definitely already in the cancer space, and then she was in a place of understanding. And what she did tell me, which was very helpful, was she did give me a word of this. This is she basically said, we're going to do this one chip at a time or one step at a time, whatever word she used. And it was like, okay, because I didn't know how to handle it.
Adolescence.
Yes. And it was nice when she said that, because I'm like, okay, so there is a pathway forward. I have no clue what it is, but it's done in small bites.
What a great word. Man, that's just... there's a story there that's in the process of that's such a great word from your mom. And it's just, I feel just warmth in hearing that from, because when you think about, you're an adult, you're a guy who's been active in your career for a while, but you've entered into a place of adolescence again in this cancer journey, and in the shock of that, in the naivety of everything that was going on, you were at this point, just like any child would be, I don't even know where to go. And it's like, hey, we're just going to do this one step at a time, from somebody who was at the end of her cancer journey or in the final stages. Yeah. And it wasn't a quick fix. It was actually something that was, I like the fact that you said were, because this point of having, someone who is walking along with you in the journey, who is a safe place, who's not giving a fix, feels like one of the most important things about any adolescent type experience. And adolescence in cancer isn't making you go back to in a year marker. It is an understanding that you're entering into something that you probably weren't ever expecting, and you have very little knowledge about, and you feel like your world is upside down and you're starting at ground zero. Right. So this is such an important thing to really know, hey, what do I hang on to? Where do I find peace in? And you found that there were people that were put into your life.
I had 3 great fears growing up. But one of them was that I would someday be diagnosed with a cancer-like diagnosis. And so that was in the back of my mind too. I was realizing one of my greatest fears in life.
I want to go to the second thing that you and I have sat here and had hours of conversations in these chairs. And there's a theme that has come back over and over and over again. And even though this wasn't like you've matured a bunch over the last 20 years, you had a foundation that you always, that tied to you, and that was your foundation in faith in Jesus Christ. And so as you entered into this, that story that you told about the station wagon, the driver, feels so important to the adolescence period, is that this seems like if you're going to start your journey, having a foundation and a faith that you can rely on may have been the thing that has maybe, not may, it appears to me to be number one in how do you start your journey of adolescence. It may not be mature. It may not be fully fleshed out, understood. You talked about you were angry with God, or you asked the why question, but there's always been a foundation that you've returned to of, but God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think there's a part in the life of Jesus where he's in his public ministry phase, the last 3 years of his life, and he's teaching and he's telling some tough stuff to a crowd, and everyone walks off except for the 12 disciples. And Jesus asks the question, "Are you going to leave me too?" Right? And Peter said, I think, something profound. He said, "Well, where are we going to go?"
Yeah.
Right? And I kind of felt the same way. Like, even though I'm really upset with you, Jesus, you are my refuge and strength. I don't have any other place to go. And so I was still wrestling with tough feelings about God and about Jesus. Like, why did this happen? And those kinds of things. But it was like, hey, you've been my trusted higher power, Savior, Lord, all this time. And I know you to be real and loving and kind. So this side of you, I don't really get, but I don't have any other place to go. I'm just going to plant both feet here.
Great.
Even though you might hear some things, Jesus, that I've never said to you before, but I don't know where else to go. This is where I'm going to settle in, right here.
That's a good word. I think that piece there, because in wounding, there's confusion.
Yeah.
And you described the confusion as like, why, how could this happen? Mm-hmm. I'm too young. All those things that happen because part of the adolescence experience is that you don't understand. Mm-hmm. You don't understand the complexities of the world. We don't understand the complexities of life and death and the kingdom of God and all these things that wrap around that. And so, but you describe a foundation that you keep returning to. But I do know this. Mm-hmm. What I do know, I'm going to just lean on that.
Yeah. So
the two big pieces that I picked out of this was that safe place of having someone who could enter into the dirt and a root in faith in Christ that was strong enough to carry you this 20 years mm-hmm. as you grew, and you're no longer an adolescent in your cancer journey. Mm-hmm. And we'll get to the stage that I think you're at a later point in time. But mm-hmm. Anything else that sticks out to you about your adolescence of your cancer journey, the wounding, that you think could be really helpful?
Yeah, as I look back now, and I minister or talk to people in the adolescent stage, I'm very gracious in that. I'm very patient. I try to be mm-hmm. and gracious in that stage. When someone's expressing anger or fear or whatever, sadness, I let them do it. At least I hope that I let them do it.
That's good.
And sitting in the dirt with them is
big. Well, so one of the things about an adolescent is that they haven't developed emotional regulation yet.
Right.
And I think you just said, hey, for a cancer patient, one of the best things you can do is express what's really there.
Yep.
Emotional regulation can come in time, mm-hmm. but the best thing that can be do is to allow the emotions to happen.
Yeah, so if they're in a community where they're not supposed to express those tough emotions, I think that that's a disservice to that person. Where let's say they're in a faith-based community that says, oh, even when bad things come your way, you should have great faith.
Rejoice always.
Yeah, rejoice always. And while that concept is true, that person is not at that point yet. And I think we do a disservice when we don't let them process and express those tough emotions and go through that. Just like an adolescent. If you tried, you would want the adolescent to express what's in their heart, right? Otherwise, they're going to bottle it up, and they're going to think, I can never be angry around you, or I can never be this around you. And I don't think that's healthy.
It's great advice.
Yeah, I want people to be able to be themselves.
Yeah.
Honesty, realistic, authentic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you see this, that can be misused, the rejoice always. There's,
Yes.
I mean, the book of Psalms is 2/3 lament. Ecclesiastes is there's a season for everything, including sadness, loss, death. These are all parts of the journey. And so all of that has to be weighed as in life. We have negative emotions and positive emotions. And there's a season for processing those negative emotions. And when you have this particular wounding, allowing those negative emotions to be felt, understood, processed, that's an important part of this journey in the adolescent stage.
Yeah.
Without expectations that they are regulated at a high level, because you're an adolescent. You just received a great wounding.
Right. Yeah. Thanks, Sean. That's good.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the main things that I thought were just that stuck out to me from your own story as you entered into this, the cancer world. And I think these are really good examples of what we mean by adolescence. We're not trying to make people immature, but we're trying to, so there's a stage here in the cancer journey that as you enter into it, embrace it, walk through it. And those key points of finding a safe place to sit in the dirt where somebody can hear, you can process, you can understand, grow in knowledge and safety. And to do that in a complete way with full emotions, something in the midst of that brings great peace as you go on the journey. So I appreciate you for sharing another part of your story today, Peter. And so
Appreciate it.
thank you all for listening, and we'll discuss the next stage on our next podcast.
Great. Thank you.